presentation. So that was really a great event. So we're going to spend this afternoon talking about advantage and using advantage to your advantage. So again, the obligatory thanks to the people who helped me pull this one together. Again, the same group, national clinicians, national instructors, national referee program, and a couple of our more senior referee advisors. And this is the agenda for the day. We'll talk about, what will we talk about? We'll talk about what the advantage clause says, where, when, and why not to apply it, what we want to do, mechanics, talk about the 2 to 3 second notion, talk about advantage in the context of cautions and ejections, and then talk about the AR's roles in sorting out what we want to do with advantage. So again, let's start with the rules in the law. Advantage is a privilege and a responsibility, and so I will once again read to you the rule in the law, and then we'll stop with that. The referee's power of penalizing shall extend to offenses committed when play has been suspended or when the ball is out of play. The referee shall, however, refrain from penalizing in the case which he or she is satisfied that by doing so an advantage would be given to the offending team. When the referee observes that a foul is not to be penalized, the referee shall call out the words, "Play on," and signal accordingly to indicate the foul has been acknowledged. However, if the advantage does not materialize, the referee shall then blow the whistle and award a free kick. Law 5 is not as wordy, allows play to continue when the team against which an offense has been committed and benefits from such an advantage and penalizes the original offense if the anticipated advantage does not ensue at that time. Good, we're done with the law. Now we can talk about this. So let's talk about game control versus game flow. What am I talking about? What do I mean when I talk about game control versus game flow in the context of advantage? What are our considerations? Seriousness of foul. Seriousness of foul. Why am I interested in this at all? We want to let the game flow, but we want to let the game be controlled. Right? I mean, we want to do both, don't we? Yes? No? I know it's after lunch. I'll give you a nap time at the top of the hour. Okay? How about that? Give me 25 minutes and I'll give you 10 minutes at the top of the hour. So, what are we trying to do? We're trying to have the game flow as smoothly as it can, but we also want to make sure it doesn't get out of control. And so advantage becomes a tool for us in the context of this balance between game flow and game control. So how do we use it to help us allow the game to flow? This is the easy part. We don't call a foul and let the game go because the advantage materializes. How about in terms of game control?
Hard foul, no advantage materialized,
stop. So this is kind of our yellow light, if you like, in the stop light of refereeing. It gives you the option to go or stop based on the traffic from the cross streets. And we want to make sure that we use it accordingly. The referee may also apply advantage solely on situations of misconduct, caution and send-off offenses, or to situations that involve foul and misconduct. So that says that you can still play advantage even when you have a situation where you want to give a caution or even a send-off. That's purely misconduct. So what's a purely misconduct situation? For instance, during the flow of play.
There's somebody cuss.
So dissent, foul language. So you can still play advantage and come back and deal with that, even though it's not a foul. It's misconduct. Advantage also applies to infringements of Rule 12 and not to infringements of other laws. So what's in another law that you can't apply advantage to? Second touch. What else?
Out of play.
Ball out and out of play. Throw in, right? Foul throw in. So we can't give advantage just because that illegal throw in, that foul throw in, went to the other team. And then playing advantage is not required in all situations, which is important. Why? So that you can deal with the severity of a foul like we just talked about, the game control versus game flow. So again, I'm taking this right out of the laws of the game or out of the advice to referees because these are important considerations. So you're trying to make sure that you can balance the game control situations with the situations in which you want to apply advantage. So let's talk about some of the considerations. Which third of the field? Why is this a consideration? Why is this important? Scoring opportunities. So does it say anywhere in the law or the rules that you only apply advantage when there's a scoring opportunity? In terms of game control versus game flow, where is the scoring opportunity more important? Game flow, right? You want to allow game to flow when there's a chance the goal is going to be scored, but when there's less of a chance the goal is going to be scored, you might weigh that on the balance of game control. Yes? No? So the third of the field plays a part in this because it has to do with when do you want to put the predominance of your weight against game control versus against flow. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about this. Tell me about this. Tell me about context. Why do I say what happened to whom, where, and when? What do I mean by that? What do you think we're talking about when we talk about context? Position on the field. Position on the field is more about which third we're in, but I'm talking more about here, about what's gone on around that foul. If I show you a video clip, which I will, and ask you whether we should be applying advantage in that situation or if we shouldn't, what are you going to tell me? Come on, you sat through one lecture, you know the answer to this question. What are we going to tell me? It depends, right? And so what does it depend on? It depends on what's happened in that game already. It depends who's it happened to. It depends on what do you think the retaliation might be. It depends on lots of stuff. And so that's the context. What's happened to whom? Does it happen to the star player? Even though there may be an advantage, is there some kind of a I'm going to protect that player mentality going on? How about time of the match? Tell me how that weighs into your decision about advantage.
Early in the match, you may want to apply control so that you got a hand. Later in the game, you already have that control, so you just maybe want to let the game flow so you can materialize this.
So if you were to think about this as a sliding scale, you would say, what I'm hearing you say is that early in the match, you probably want to weigh that scale more on the side of control. Later in the game, more on the side of game flow. Yeah. What else? Go ahead.
Later in the game, if you are having trouble with control, you may want to take control and stop it and
Right,
call the fouls up.
Yeah, so that's a bit about context too. How many fouls have happened recently? Right, we've all seen the situations where there's kind of play on, play on, play on, and all of a sudden it's like we're not playing on, right? So that's the context piece. It's also time of the game piece.
Would you also consider score a factor of time as well?
I would. I mean, I think I might consider more as context, but it's a good point. We talk about the score of the game.
And if the team is up 3-0 with under 2 left, and they're fouled in the attacking third, you might stop it versus it being 0-0 game, with something on the line.
Yeah. So again, in this balance of control versus flow, it's less important to allow good flow when the game is kind of decided. Right? What do you want to do in a 3-0 game? What do you really want to do in a 3-0 game? Get out of there. Without any problems. Right? And so in a 3-0 game, you might err on the side of a little bit more game control than a little bit more game flow. How about in the context of offside? Any considerations there?
Doesn't it apply to it? Because it wouldn't really be advantage to the defense, the offense more?
So it may not apply because there'll be a benefit to the defense and not the offense. But here where I'm trying to go on this one is in the situation of offside where you have this distance to the ball, you have a situation. We know that offsides is becoming much more clearer. And did we do the offside presentation yet? Okay, so you're going to get to the offside presentation later, and things are getting more clear. But in some of the older the interpretations that you'll have gone up to before today, there's some balls where are kind of 50-50 judgments on whether or not there's an offside. And the ball's getting played through, you want to wait to see if that player's participating. You've been told to avoid collisions with the goalkeeper. So you have all those considerations, and when it comes to this, it's almost an advantage situation about, do I really want to bring that play back to where the offside position is, or allow the defense on that 50-50 ball potentially to play it from where the keeper has it. So that particular bullet point may be a little bit out of date with all the new interpretations we have on offside, but the consideration when I wrote this was about bringing the ball back maybe 30, 40 yards upfield to allowing the goalkeeper to have the ball in his or her hands. And it's different for different games.
So you're talking about closer to the half.
Closer to the half line versus giving the goalkeeper possession at the 18. So again, as we get the new offside interpretation, this becomes less relevant. But that's the thought behind that point. And then what the restart would be. So what are we thinking about here with a restart? I mean, let's go to the extreme. In the penalty box, advantage, what's the restart? PK. So on that consideration, unless it's really a goal, unless that ball's going to wind up in the back of the net, you want to give the penalty kick, correct? So as you move it all the way back upfield and you're 80 yards away, then the restart being a direct free kick is just fine, and that's not a problem, and you might as well give that direct free kick if there's no good advantage. But when you're at 30 yards, 20 yards outside, just outside the edge of the penalty box, outside the edge of the penalty area, what do you want to do? You want to wait and see, but there's a time frame there, but there's a pretty important restart element to that the direct free kick you're going to give is a pretty good advantage in and of itself, especially if a team has a free kick artist, if you like. And again, this is part of putting things in the context. If you see teams that are very good on set pieces, then giving a set piece may be as much of an advantage as letting the play go on. This is to be advantageous to the team that was fouled, not your judgment of play is more advantageous than stopping play. If a team prefers set pieces, and you know that from the flow of the game, it ought to be a consideration when determining whether you want to play advantage right outside the 18. So again, in terms of thirds of the field, there's really what we would want to call a high, medium, and low risk area. So we've got the place in the defensive third of the field. We're playing advantage is a bit more of a high risk, because if you screw up and the ball gets taken away, and I'm not talking the 2 to 3 seconds when you bring it back, you're putting the defense at a pretty big disadvantage. And then in the low risk area, in the attacking third, the opportunity here is to make sure that they get the best advantage that they can at that point in time. So the considerations are, how is the play going to develop and materialize? What are the other restart options for the team? What's their propensity and their preferences in those areas? A lot of times the players will tell you early in the game, geez, referee, why didn't you call that? Which means, don't give me the advantage, I would have rather had a free kick. Or, geez, let us play. We had the advantage. And you can see a few of those and you'll understand the team's orientation toward advantage. And so should you take that into account with advantage? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because advantage, it's not right or wrong to give advantage. It's a tool in the referee's toolbox. And so it ought to reflect the preferences of the team and their propensity to benefit from those preferences. So let's look at a video.
Again, using that looking.
What do you think of that advantage? Tell me about it. You like that? It's pretty, again, these aren't all hard. There are some things that are pretty straightforward. So pretty good advantage, right? Pretty obvious. Player gets fouled. It's a pretty simple foul. Right? Gets right back up. Ball's right at his feet. Continues playing. Nobody has a problem with it, right? None of the teams have a problem with it. Teammates, other team, just keeps on playing. Right? And they get a reasonable attacking opportunity. So let's look at another one.
On the men's side, when they started the women's program, we took it over.
What'd you think of that one? Did the team want the game to stop? But we're in the midfield area. Some might argue, well, why are you giving advantage in midfield? There's no scoring opportunity, right? But what we're seeing here is the team preferred to play. They wanted to play. They liked the game flow. They liked the way that they were able to build their attack. They had no issue with the referee allowing play to continue in that situation.
I think the 5 minutes in, when they're shooting, maybe set the tone, or maybe we see what we want to play through and what we can tolerate today.
Yeah, I think we're counting down, aren't we? We're counting up on this one? Okay. Okay, good. All right, so early in the game, we're setting the tone. And the tone here is I, referee, understand what you want to do. Big kids game, right? College, Division I, you want to play. We're going to let you play. Now what happens if this happens like all the time? What do you start to do? Persistence, you got to stop it, you got to slow it down, right? If every single time in midfield there's a little tick on the ankles, you're looking for persistent infringement, you're looking to, is this going to start to escalate? Is there going to be some retaliation later in the game? But for this, as an isolated clip, no problem. There's actually a clip back there. Find my cursor.
Or this for Sasso Swarovski. I'll tell you what, they'll give due credit because their fan base continues to grow under John Kerr as they get some pretty good crowds out of Koskinen.
What about that one? So one thing different about that versus the first two I showed was in this case, the player lost the ball, a different teammate picked it up and continued play, right? Why does that become a consideration? One less player attack with. What else?
Player that got injured was on the ground.
Player get fouled might be a better player, which is kind of the one less player to play with, and you don't have the same attacking stuff. If someone's going to take exception with the foul, who's it going to be? And what's that player doing right now? Holding his leg. And where's the ball? Someplace else. So you've got now a few things to worry about. When it's the player who's fouled who recovers the ball, they have one thing in mind, which is deal with the ball. He has something else in mind, maybe. So it's just another consideration. And it was a bit of a harder foul. He didn't just bounce right back up. He was kind of rubbing his ankle and not really happy about that. So again, where was that? It was just inside midfield. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's kind of been getting to this place where I've seen some professionals, pretty defend the line way high. It's professionals drop that ball in that dead space in between the last line of defenders and the goalkeeper. Very early in the situation. That's obviously a good place to blow the whistle. And the advantage really might be irritated.
And so the consideration there is what kind of restart do they play and what might they do off of a set play from there versus what are they able to do to build that attack. And again, it's not like there's an obvious goal-scoring opportunity there that's going to materialize in the next one or two passes. This is a consideration about what are the alternatives for that team and what do the players feel is the right answer. And again, you know from the first lecture, I'm not giving you answers, I'm giving you questions and considerations.
Nobody on the offensive team was
Descending against.
Jordan said he on the ground was kind of rubbing his ankle saying, what the heck, what was the number of that truck that just hit me? But, right? But other than that, you're right. They were okay. They may have been okay. They seem to be okay with it. But we don't, but we have other considerations. That's why I'm not going to tell you it's right or wrong. I'm just saying those are considerations that we want to take into account in the context of the game.
When you get a goal, keep the momentum, and get the other team on their field.
Talks about the vet coming in, 11 goals at this point, 4 shots. She's got 1 goal on 2 shots. Midway mark here in the first half.
Not that stat.
What about that one? They're not complaining, but what's the benefit now you get as a referee for letting that play continue? I mean, that
Should have restarted it.
That was an easy one to just call a foul. This is one where signage will tell you, call the foul. Call the darn foul, right? I mean, that's the one where they'll say, why not just call a foul? Back to the goal. You're going to pass the ball back to a defender. I mean, you don't really have any advantage there by moving the ball
you're moving the ball backwards. And so that's one where you might question, what's the real benefit, the advantage of giving advantage? And what might you want to be able to say? I mean, that was kind of a foul in the back of the legs, too. It wasn't exactly, you know, it wasn't a hard foul, but it wasn't in the place that I'm happy to see people kicking each other. And I might just take that opportunity to say, hey, you know, come on, cut that out. I don't like that. But you lose that opportunity now when you're dealing with this. You're going to go on with the play. Let's look at another one.
And by the way, if Duke was to go down, and at the end of this game, you'd see Mike up top. Matt Castle. Playing wide. Rocky with that right foot. Done.
So now, even though that foul is at midfield, what happened? They had numbers going forward, they had a much better scoring opportunities. So that's why you can't really say just based on where it is in the field determines whether you ought to play advantage or not. You have to look at what's going on, you have to have a picture of the entire field in front of you and not be tunnel focused just on that one part of the game. And so here you can see that set up a very promising attack from a pretty clear foul at midfield.
And by the way, if Duke was to go down, and we're down at the end of this game, you'd see.
So let's talk about when we can and can't play advantage. So, first of all, is when the ball's in and out of play. As much as you might love to be able to give advantage to that ball into touch, you can't do it. And hopefully you're instructing your ARs that as well. If I miss the ball going into touch, I don't care how long you have to stand there with the flag up, we've got to restart with that throw-in. 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, that's it. You can't decide that we're going to play advantage. And the other thing you can't do is decide after you've blown the whistle that you want to play advantage. I mean, I've unfortunately seen this every once in a while where you'll hear the little tweet, like, oh, I didn't really mean to do that. The little tweet on the whistle, and then all of a sudden you hear play on. Too late. Once you've blown the whistle, and as I said, potentially blown the call, it's too late. So that's why I wait those extra second or two to make sure you really want to call a foul. Because there really is nothing worse than having an obvious advantage situation and then finding that you've blown the whistle and screwed it all up. Well, here's another one.
Here comes Scored. Scored with one man to beat. He's knocked to the ground. Will they give it to him? Yeah, they will finally. They had to. They were going to see if he could spin out of it.
Yeah, no, he tried to play through it, and it was interesting because it was a hard tackle, and the referee's right on top of that to say that there was too much body on that.
Please don't pay attention to the commentators. Because Army Navy, I mean that might be an intense game. Tell me about that call.
Played the advantage that didn't develop. He went back to the foul.
But did it develop or not? I mean,
I probably would let the second foul go a little longer because his own man got the ball moving forward, a lot of space in front of him.
Yeah. It seems like when he chose to whistle that play is when the advantage actually materialized.
Right, hard foul, and maybe that announcer was right. Maybe he couldn't spin out of it. He couldn't spin out of it, but the ball went right to a teammate who now had all that space in front of him. And now the referee blows the whistle, and it's like, oh, shoot. I've just blown the whistle, and this guy's got 30 yards of green grass. Because I'm focused on that one hard foul, it's about the context and perspective again. And if you're not going to need to deal with that for game control, I'm not going to say it's the wrong call. Maybe that foul really needs to be called because things are starting to heat up, and yeah, I'm going to give up that advantage because I really need to deal with that. If that's the case, I might have dealt with it quicker. But in this context, I think I would have let that one continue. And it's, hindsight's always 20/20. It's always perfect. But as we're looking at this to learn in those situations, I think the learning piece, again, it's not about what the referee did, whether he did what's right or wrong. The learning piece here is to make sure you really wait to see what develops. It didn't look like there was going to be immediate retaliation if he didn't blow the whistle. So that's a consideration again. Is that player who was fouled, since he's not going to be the one to get the ball, going to retaliate or do something foolish? And what's going to happen with the ball once it does pop out of there? In this case, it pops out of there to lots of open space. And so the consideration here is that enough of an advantage to allow that play to continue? Again, you can't really tell from a clip in isolation outside of the context of the whole game, but it does show this notion of just waiting that extra half a second or maybe a second or two to see what's going to happen. Let's talk again about signaling and mechanics. Well, not again, but let's talk a little bit about mechanics and signaling. So, proper signal. So, somebody want to demonstrate? Who wants to demonstrate? Let's get one of our younger referees to demonstrate for me. Who wants to demonstrate a proper signal for advantage? Sean, somebody stand up here and show me a good advantage call. Show me a good advantage call. There you go. Go on. Come on.
You want me to go down there?
No, you can do it there. We can see you.
Play on.
There you go. Well done. So get those arms up, get that arm out, and make sure people hear you. Because that's a signal just as much as blowing your whistle is. Which means you should only use it when you are truly signaling an advantage. So play on is not code for no foul. What's code for no foul? No foul. Nothing there. Right? Not play on. And so be careful about that, because I think people too often like to use that as, I've seen something, but there's no foul. And I would again there are a lot of things I'm going to advise you to do directly. This is one of them. I would advise you to create your own lexicon for that, so you're very clear with yourself about how you're going to indicate verbally that you've seen something, but there's no foul. And I just say that, no foul. No foul, nothing there. Keep going. But not play on. I don't want to say play. I mean, so well, I say play instead of play on. Not, in my opinion, the best way to do that. Okay? So, not as good as you did, but close enough. So again, make sure you're clear so the players are clear about advantage versus no foul. Why is that? Why is it important for the players to know whether you're calling advantage or no foul?
Make sure that they don't think that they can do it if it's going to foul or something.
Yeah, make sure they understand you know what's going on. You want them to know that you know what's going on. Because if you say this is advantage, and they're going to say the next time someone does that to me, if I don't have the ball, you're going to call foul, right? If you just told me it was a foul and I had the ball. So the next time that happens and I don't have the ball, you're going to call a foul. So you think about that when you do yell play on. If you still think it's trifling and it's not a foul, then don't call play on. Say trifling. Nah, it's nothing that's trifling. As opposed to play on. Tell the rest of us. It was good. Tell the rest of us. You laughed.
If they said, if you're going to call that next time, I have an off-ball system where I would probably say, you think that call was bad, wait for the next one.
See, I told you it was worth it. Positioning is important too. It's always important. It's important in advantage. Because it's easier to sell an advantage call when you're right there and you see what's happening. Just like it's easier to sell a foul call. Why else is it important? Cycle back about 10 minutes. I know this is the nap time, I promise. But cycle back about 10 minutes. And what did we just say about what happens when the ball squirts out to another player on your team and it's not, you don't keep it yourself? You're upset, you're worried about what that retaliation may be. Is retaliation more likely or less likely to happen when you're standing right over the guy saying, play on? So it's important. This is important too. This is what we're saying. When someone gets taken down really hard, even if and we're going to talk about advantage and cautions and advantage and misconducts in a second, but when someone gets taken down in a situation like this, and their natural propensity is to get up and do something about it, you have to make sure that you've got two sets of eyes. And you have to adjust your positioning accordingly. So how do you do that? Let's get some discussion going here. I'm talking too much and you're not talking enough. So how do you do this?
Have your ARs watch your back.
And how do you make sure the players know you're doing that?
Look at your AR once in a while.
Yeah. What else? What else do you do to make sure that the players know that you have the AR watching the situation?
You can be pointing at them as you're going where the ball's at, make sure your AR seeing you. I got it, I see you, but I gotta get here.
So this is a situation, Newsom, this is a situation where you're likely to call misconduct. So there's a yellow card, but there's a clear advantage.
Yep.
I mean, I guess I would make sure I pull the player after play on. I'll come back to this so that he knows that we'll deal with this. I saw this.
Okay, I mean that's, yep, I'm going to get there in misconduct. I'm talking a little lower. I'm not going to give a card now, but I've got a foul where maybe the player wants one, but I'm not going to give it, or maybe I haven't decided if I'm going to give it yet. Or maybe I need to get out of dodge quickly because it really is an advantage, and that play is going, like the next play is going to be goalkeeper, attacker one-on-one. And so the question is, how do you make sure while you're dealing with that, someone's dealing with, the two guys back there who are tangled up, legs in each other's face kind of stuff. And this, eye contact, point.
Cover it in your pregame.
Cover it in your pregame. But you want the players to know. I mean, clearly you want the crew to know, you want the players to know. There's nothing wrong with saying, Jim, watch these two, right? As you're going. Even if Jim doesn't hear you. They heard you. It doesn't matter whether Jim heard you. But you cover it in your pregame. So Jim knows to watch them. You're actually not telling Jim to watch those two guys because you want Jim to know. You're telling Jim to watch those two guys because you want the two guys to know. So, someone will say, well, I can't do that. The field is too loud or, it's too far away or whatever. It doesn't matter. The only two people who have to hear you say that are the two guys on the ground.
But get the AR's name.
You need to know that. They don't need to know who Jim is. They just know somebody's going to be watching it. Right? But that's, again, so just think about your communication, about who the communication really is for. And so covering this stuff in the pregame is absolutely the right thing to do. And as much as you cover in the pregame, it's really important to talk about this behind the ball situations. And you'll always cover in pregame, watch my back, and here's what you need to do when something goes on behind my back, and all that kind of mechanic stuff. So we've talked about this. So you've talked about it in the pregame that you want them to watch that stuff. Hopefully the ARs are, following instructions and doing what you agreed in the pregame. So you only want the players to know that someone's going to be watching. So it doesn't really matter who views you, others than those two. And so when you think about the communication, I would suggest to think about who it's for. Because that communication is not for the AR, it's for the two players. Two to 3 second view. So don't be afraid to call it back. I think we're getting much better as a referee community about this. And who remembers, old guys like me, remember when you used to have to make the judgment on advantage and you get an option. Once you said play on, you were done. You couldn't call it back. I don't know if anybody remembers that. But you had to make that determination and then you were finished. If you did that and nothing materialized, too bad. I'm glad we added this new consideration to the rules, and so now you have this opportunity to call it back if the advantage doesn't materialize. It makes sense. That's the intent of the rule. So use it. Use it to our advantage. Use it to our advantage. I mean, that's the title, using advantage to your advantage. So use them. Nothing in the rule book says 2 to 3 seconds. It's the notion of the advantage doesn't materialize. But what's the basis for determining whether that advantage materializes or not? How do you determine whether the advantage materializes? Does the attack continue? Is it about the opportunity or about the outcome? Opportunity. Okay, so tell me about outcomes that are different than opportunities. So the guy takes a shot,
It's a bad pass.
makes a bad pass.
You can't help that that guy made the bad pass. You gave him the advantage to play it just because he messed it up isn't your fault.
Exactly. That's the point. That's exactly the point. So the opportunity is there. If the bad pass is made because of the foul, that's a different story. But the ball goes, squirts out from that player, like the one we saw where they start passing across the back. Right? The woman passes the ball to the other woman right at the center circle, and now she makes a bad pass. That's not, you can't bring that advantage back, which is why that's a little bit more of a danger area. And that's why you have to consider the player's skills in terms of that advantage consideration. But once you've given that advantage, the player making a mistake is different than the advantage not materializing. So another one is you have this situation where we talked about advantage in the penalty area. And so you see this guy taken down in the penalty area, the ball squirts out to the person who sets a side foot into the net, and he puts it over the crossbar. Can't call it back, right? As much as you'd like to, as much as you're going to get all sorts of grief for not giving the penalty kick, you can't call it back. Because he didn't put it over the crossbar because of the foul, he put it over the crossbar because he has this uncanny knack to be able to miss the goal from 3 feet away. Right? And that's, so the opportunity versus the outcome is important. If the opportunity was influenced, affected by the foul, then you can call it back. If the outcome wasn't what you thought it should have been, that's the risk you're taking from playing advantage. At the end of the day, it's about trying to be just and fair. I mean, that's why advantage is in the game. It's to provide justice and fairness for the attacking team. And unlike the basketball rule where you foul someone so they don't get the layup, this is about allowing the play to continue so you can get the soccer equivalent of a layup. Just by the way, I was a basketball official in my younger days, and I decided I had to stop refereeing basketball when I would call play on. So, that's when I knew to stop being a basketball official. And this is what we just said. Right? You can't use a bad outcome to determine whether it was a bad advantage call. Another video clip on a black screen. I gotta figure out what I think. What about that advantage? Right in front of the benches, right in front of the scorer's table, with nobody around, boxed in by 2 defenders. Play on? Question mark? What do you think? So what's the consideration here that you want to take? What are you thinking about when that happens?
Position on the field.
Position on the field, location, opportunity to do something. Were there a lot of attackers around to help that player out if he got through that one defender? So, it's a bit being lazy, if you like, right? Again, I show you these just so that when that happens in your game, you've thought about it. Not that you've done A or B or C, you've thought about it. Because this is about thinking about it.
He's going, and the whole play's going to go down the left side, and then do a nice little spin turn around, plays through, or takes a shot at that.
Saw Ben Limbaugh, who did that from Mom. Pilgrim. Take a look at Ben Limbaugh. I'll tell you what, he gave up that goal. He played 21 minutes going in and already given up 2 goals. So now he's playing about 25 minutes and give it.
Something about that advantage, or not?
I would have waited a bit longer.
You would have waited a bit longer. You like the attack, right? It was that came out of that?
Yeah.
What about did you like the foul?
Cell phone more.
It was right in his ankle.
It was right in his ankle. What kind of whistle did you hear from the referee? He wasn't happy, right? Which is another consideration. If you're stopping an advantage because you're not happy, make sure the rest of your actions are aligned with that. You don't do a little tweet. If you're going to stop what might be an advantage because of a hard foul, you're going to make sure everybody knows, I am not happy about this. Now, I may or may not choose to give a card on that foul. We'll talk about that on the next slide, I believe. I may or may not choose to give a card on that. But I am certainly not happy about that foul, and I am not giving advantage because this foul needs to be dealt with. That's what I'm saying. And so when that ball pops out and that advantage looks like it's going to materialize, now what do you need to do as a referee?
You need to just talk to the player, the attacking player, and let him know, right, I'm protecting you. I didn't think this should be let go. That's why I didn't give advantage. Right.
Very good. What else do you need to do? Or might you do? We don't need to do. Might you do? So you might actually stop the clock, which you might not have done otherwise, and pull that player aside and give him a good talking to, even though you might have just said, well, it's a hard foul, but I wasn't going to do any more than that. Because you want people to know that you stopped that advantage because it was more than just a simple little tap on the foot. So you might make sure the attacker knows why you did that, and it looks like that's what happened because you saw the referee run by the attacker, pat him on the shoulder, and everybody was happy, and nobody seemed to complain about not having the advantage. Or you might go over and stop the clock. 23, I want to talk to you. And a lot of this kind of stuff. Cut that out, I don't want to see that again. It was a pretty hard foul. It was to the back of his legs. So let's talk about the considerations when... No, we have one more clip. Okay, one more clip and then we'll talk about misconduct considerations.
See here, Sarah's story has such terrific kicks. She gets such distance on it, but all this just hasn't been able to win that first or second ball off of it, so it hasn't really helped her too much.
Not much there, right? Not much there one way or another. And nobody seems to mind just playing through all that stuff. Just kind of people getting tangled up a bit. But no play on, which was good. We didn't see a play on, we didn't hear a play on. So again, this is I think, a good demonstration of the difference between a trifling contact, a trifling foul, and advantage. There was no need to say play on here, but rather the opportunity to let play continue because there's just a trifling contact. Let's talk about this in terms of cautions and objections. So the only rule in soccer refereeing is there are no rules, right? So this is one of the usages as well. So the seriousness of the foul is independent of advantage, usually. Why do I say usually? What's that? I thought I heard somebody say something. Yeah.
Because it all depends on the situation.
It all depends. Thank you. And what might it depend on in that situation? If I'm going to card somebody, either yellow card or send them off, eject them, why is that a consideration?
Because they might have a scoring opportunity, but you would have to go to the player and say, no, you cannot do this, and card foul.
Yes, I might be worried about game control, right? I might be worried about retaliation. What else might I be worried about?
Player's health. The injured player's health.
Injured player? Todd? What's another? There's one more consideration I'm looking for, maybe a little bit obscure, but I'm going to give you one more shot at it. What else might I be looking for? The player has nothing else to lose, maybe. If I told him I'm giving a yellow card over he has one, it's like, oh, well, free season. I get to take whacks at anybody now. I'm done anyhow. You've already told me I'm done. Let's see how many I can take out with me. So some of the things about cautions that are important is if you're going to come back and caution somebody, you got to make sure you remember who it is. It may seem obvious, but you're letting play continue, and stuff's gone on behind you. Right? It only has to happen to you once, and I bet it's happened to all of us once, where you forgot who the person was that you wanted to go back and caution, and they kind of disappear into the crowd. They're just like gone when you turn around. They're not there anymore. So you've got to be really clear about who you're coming back for. And this is one, we talked a little bit about this during the persistent infringement thing, but this is one where I actually verbalized a number, not only for me, but so my ARs and the fourth and the other team, everybody knows who I'm talking to. 22, I'm coming back for you. So now at least I've got a better chance of remembering it's 22. And someone else heard me say it's 22. Because you want to make sure you don't lose them. Because you're gone, you're on. I mean, if this is a cautionable offense, and you're letting play continue, you've got a pretty good opportunity here. Right? The game control, game flow balance. You want to control that game, you want to get that yellow card when you need to. And so if you're going to let play continue, you've got a really good advantage. You think something really good is going to happen. You actually want to see the ball in the back of the net.
But maybe not necessarily in the advantage situation, but say there's a foul and somebody's serving up a card and they disappear in the mist. Can you go up to the captain and say, a card worthy foul submitted, I'm going to give you the card unless you tell me who it was or some situation where somebody needs to be penalized for what happened?
I know where you're going, but I might handle it a bit differently. First, obviously, I check with my AR. Right. Let's see if we as a crew can sort this out before we go to the other team to help us. Then I go and maybe I go to the captain and say, look, I'll be honest with you, I lost it. I think it was 22. Not that I'm going to give it to you. I think it was 22. If it wasn't, I'll give you one chance to tell me who it really was. And if he tells you, well, it was number 17 and 17 sitting on the bench, 22's gone. 22's the one's getting it. But he said, no, it was really 13. You look and say, yeah, hopefully you're going to recognize the player when I tell you who it is. So they can help you that way. But I pick somebody not, put it on the captain and say, be the corporate snitch.
Question back, like you verbalized 22, I'm coming back for you, and you know in your head, I just gave 22 a card 5 minutes ago. So now 22 knows I'm done.
All right, that's what I said, be careful about that. I'm going to come to ejections here in a second, because I consider...
Right there, not playing the advantage, perhaps?
It depends.
I'm going to come back to that because it's a really important point, because that is exactly the point I'm going to make on the next slide about, once you've told people they're done for the day, they have a little bit more free rein. Now, again, the world has changed a bit around that too, where they can get greater sanctions than just the one-game suspension if do something really foolish. But it does depend because of that. But I also want to make sure I know. That's why it's also important not only to keep cards in the book, but to keep cards in your head. So if I'm going to do that, I know that 22 has a card already. Because if I do that thinking that it's 22's first, even though I'll get it right once I pull my book out, I'm not prepared for what might happen. And so you want to make sure you are prepared. You have to follow through on this stuff. Once you say I'm coming back for you, depends how you word that, but whatever you say, you got to follow through on. If you come back and say 22, you got a yellow. Because you also, to be fair to 22, you don't want him to get a second yellow on some second play that happens, because you need to deal with both of those if they happen before the next stoppage of play. So you have to be careful. If you say you're going to come back 22, you got a yellow, and then play goes on for another 3 minutes before there's a stoppage, you can't say, well, that was a long time ago. Everybody's forgotten about it. To heck with it. We won't deal with it. You have to come back and deal with it. So you have to follow through. Or the ball, ends, like you said, it's a great advantage. You play through it. The ball ends up in the back of the net. They're all celebrating. They pull the ball back out, and you say, no, there's enough stuff going on here. I'm not going to go back with the card 22. You got it. You said you're going to contact with it. You got to follow through. Because then you lose all credibility with the players if you don't. And you want to, again, make sure that both the person who's getting that card and the person who was fouled knows you're doing that as well, which is the other reason I tend to verbalize that on my way by. So because the person got fouled just got fouled hard enough for me to want to give a card. So I suspect he or she's not happy. And I want to make sure he or she knows I'm taking care of stuff and that they don't have to take justice into their own hands. So, the rule of thumb is with ejections, don't let play continue. Ejection is serious enough that you want to just stop the play and get rid of that player because that foul was egregious enough you want to send the player off. So that's kind of the general wisdom on that. But as I say, it depends, or never say never, because there may be situations where you have such a promising attack or where the situation is going to lead to an immediate goal, whatever it happens to be, that even though you're going to get to a send-off, you're going to get to a red card, you don't want to stop the play. But that's one where you really need to, have heightened awareness. And in some respects, that's one where you may not want to come back and tip your hand. You can come back and say, 22, you're going to get a card. You may not know what color it's going to be, and you probably won't like it when you find out, but you're getting a card. It just happens to be red, you don't know it yet. I decided, you just don't know it. So general rule of thumb is if you have a send-off, an ejection, a red card, deal with that, because that's a serious enough deal, and it's enough of an advantage for the other team that you want to take advantage of it. And again, you don't have any other tools once you're telling them to get a red card. So again, you have to deal with this at the next stoppage of play. You can't allow that next quick restart to happen. So again, you want to give that yellow card. You say play on. I want to give the yellow card. 22, I'm coming back to give you a yellow card. And then there's another foul, and the offense gets up and they want to play the ball quickly. You got to stop that. Whatever you need to do. You know, the tweet on the whistle, whatever you need to do to stop that second restart. Because once that second restart happens, now you can't come back and deal with it. Too late. So make sure you do whatever you need to stop that game from restarting. And again, that shouldn't be a problem. You know you have to. There's only you have to communicate to someone else that I don't want the game to restart. You've got the whistle. You need to do it. Am I dead on time here? We're going to 20? Oh, we're going to 20 yet. I'm sorry. Whoops. I thought we were going to the bottom of the hour. We're done. We're done. All right. Thank you.